guys. Are you guys ready to read today? Yes! Well, Tyler, I'm so glad that you're that happy. Kitty Puppy Bunny? Yes! Dave? Yes! Dave. Okay, chapter 35. Fear Smells. Flora's father never walked through the hallways of Blixen Arms. He ran, and Flora Buckman, holding her possibly concussed squirrel, ran with him. Flora and George Buckman ran because the Blixen Arms was owned and managed by a man named Mr. Klaus, who was in possession of an enormous, angry, orange cat also named Mr. Klaus. Claus? Mr. Klaus. Claus. I don't know if it's Klaus or Klaus or Klaus. I'm going to say Claus. I think it's Claus, like Santa Claus. Okay. The cat, Mr. Claus, prowled the hallways of the Blixen Arms, peeing on the residents' doors and vomiting in the stairwells. Oh my gosh. Mr. Claus was also notorious for hiding in the green gloom of the hallways and waiting until some unlucky person stepped out of the door of his or her apartment, or into the main entrance of the Blixen Arms, or down into the basement of the laundry room, and then pouncing on the person's ankles, biting, scratching, growling, and sometimes, weirdly enough, purring. Flora's father's ankles were deeply scarred. "That cat can smell your fear," Flora shouted as she ran. "It's a scientific fact." She had read about fear and terrible things can happen to you. Fear smells, and terrible things, and the smell of fear further incites the predator. Ahead of her, her father laughed his hearty and seemingly endless laugh. If Flora had more time, she would have said, "For the love of Pete, what is so funny?" But she didn't have time. There was a squirrel to save. Chapter 36. Surprise, Anger, Joy. Flora stood and stared at the sign on apartment 267. It was made of fake wood and engraved with white letters that spelled out the words, "Residing within, the doctor's Mishkim." What was the apostrophe doing there? Did the doctor own a Mishkem? I don't know what that is. And what was it with the exclamation marks? Did people not know what they were for? Surprise, anger, joy. That's what exclamation marks were for. They had nothing to do with who resided there. But at this particular moment, the exclamation mark seemed entirely appropriate. It was terribly exciting that a doctor who didn't know how to use apostrophes lived in apartment 267. "What are you staring at?" said her father. He was putting his key into the door of apartment 271, and he was laughing softly. "A doctor lives here," said Flora. "Dr. Mishkem," said her father. "I'm going to see if he can help us with Ulysses," said Flora. "Excellent idea," said her father. He opened the door of his apartment. He looked left, then to the right. "Keep your eyes open for Mr. Claus," he said. "I'll join you in a bit." He slammed the door just as Flora raised her hand to knock on Dr. Mishkem's door. Yeah. Okay. But she didn't get a chance to knock. The door swung open of its own accord. An old lady stood there smiling, her dentures glowing white in the perpetual green twilight of the hallway. Someone inside the apartment was screaming. No, someone was singing. It was opera music. "At last," said the old lady. "I'm so glad to see your face." Flora turned and looked behind her. "I am speaking to you, little flower." "Me?" said Flora. "Yes, you, little flower. Flora Bell, beloved of your father, Mr. George Buckman. Come in, little flower, come in." "Actually," said Flora, "I'm looking for a doctor. I have a medical emergency." Of course, said the old woman. "We are all of us medical emergencies. You must come in now. I have been waiting for so long." She reached out and yanked Flora over the threshold of 267 into the apartment. The criminal element had a lot to say about entering the home of a stranger. They suggested that you do so at your own risk, and that if you did make the questionable decision to enter the home of someone you don't know, a door to the outside world should be left open at all times to facilitate a quick escape. That's funny that the woman didn't react to her holding a squirrel. That's funny. The old lady slammed the door shut. The opera music was very loud now. Flora looked down at the hand that was on her arm. It was spotted and wrinkled. Beloved? Thought Flora. Me? Okay. Dave and I, first question today. So, the woman that opens the door for Flora, is she a doctor? Do you guys think she's a doctor? And if you do think she's a doctor, do you think she's like a real doctor? Or do you think she's like some kind of other doctor? What is she the doctor of? Second question is, what's going to happen in there? What's going to happen in that opera singing house? What do you think is going to happen? Is she going to cure Ulysses? Anything could happen. So 2 questions. 1, is the woman the doctor? 2, what's going to happen next in the woman's apartment?